Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, on this wonderful day in August, August 20th. We're just at 8 o'clock here, Mountain Standard Time. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I'm going to give it about one more minute to get some people logged in here last minute. So we will get going here shortly. All righty. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Like I said earlier, my name is Nick, and I will be hosting today's webinar with our guest and our featured partner, Air Supply Aerial. Thank you guys, gals, everybody that is registered. Today, we are going to be not only diving in to phase one, we are going to chat with Wyatt about our Gremsy Gimbal and the integration with that. We want to get everybody comfortable with that. So we will start. Again, agenda for today. Nick speaking currently. I am the phase one UAS channel manager for our iXM camera, where we will be going over a phase one overview of the company. We're going to review our iXM series camera. We're going to get into Wyatt Robbins, the president at Air Supply. He's going to do an introduction of himself, the company, and then getting into instruction on the Gremsy gimbal itself fitted to our iXM 100 camera today. And then, of course, per usual, we're going to get into some question and answers with you people there in the audience. But today, before we dive in, I wanted to do a quick poll, 3-question poll that I have for everybody. Not going to be too challenging this early in the morning, going to give you some multiple choice. So I'm going to launch the first of 3 questions. So take a couple 5-10 seconds to answer those and we'll get going. Give it a couple more seconds here. Looks like we're getting some good participation out there, so thank you. About 50-50 there on everyone attending today that does or does not own or operate a phase one camera. Question number 2, coming your way. Couple more seconds. Thanks again, everybody participating. Looks like that 10 to 30 minute time slot is pretty common for folks out there. Over half of you. Wrap this up. And last but not least, third and final question today, coming your way. About half of you looking into that Gremsy mount information today. So you're in the right spot. Hang tight with us and we're going to get going on that. All righty, wrap this up here in a couple more seconds. Great participation out there. All right, so again, my name is Nick O'Neilio. I'm the area sales manager, channel manager for our UAS division here at Phase 1 Industrial. Our offices here, we are in Broomfield, Colorado. So we are between Denver and Boulder, Colorado at the Rocky Mountain Airport. To those of you who or ever have the chance to come through Denver or even at the Rocky Mountain Airport, please feel free to stop in. The door is always open. We know it's very hardening times for some out there, and so our thoughts and prayers are with everybody during this time. Hopefully everyone is well, healthy, and staying active in there. Again, today we're going to be going over the Gremsy Gimbal, coupled with our Phase 1 iXM camera. A little bit of background about myself. So I first got into the UAV industry. I worked for a UAV manufacturer for 2 years. I spearheaded and stood up the USA division, selling multi-rotor and single-rotor aircraft to local survey firms in the construction sector, to utility companies, to even engineering firms throughout the country. I then went to a company called Juniper Unmanned, which we specialized in flying, service provider services for companies out there. So we specialized in LiDAR. So that's where I got the full in from not only from flying it, collecting it, and then processing the data as well. And then at the beginning of this year, I came aboard. My counterpart, Ryan Boswell, who many of you may know, has stepped onto a promotion within our company, and I'm filling his shoes and noticing the knowledge and expertise that he has, and hopefully carrying that forward for our UAS division here at Phase 1. A little bit of an intro for Phase 1 Industrial. So we are a division of Phase 1 whole, with researchers, developers, manufacturers of medium format and large format digital systems, software, and imaging solutions for industrial markets. Our solutions ranges, as you see from this screen here, from our aerial image acquisition to we have our machine vision applications and cultural heritage preservations. Whether we can map the globe, executing industrial inspections as priceless works of art and documents, and that focus is on our imaging accuracies that we provide. We have today a trusted brand, so over 100,000 customers, whether that's on our software side, whether that's our industrial umbrella, and whether that's our software side. We have 100,000 satisfied customers out there today. We are proud to say we are the market leader in medium format imaging. We have worldwide distribution, as you will see on my next slide, headquartered in Copenhagen. We have 24/7 global customer support. For those out you, our support tab, not many are aware of that. On our homepage, you are able to go to our support link. You enter in your iXM serial numbers, and you can use our support case portal for our customer support there. And then last but not least, I think those are two big hitters I want to make sure each of you understand. We do listen. We are customer centric, so we are adapting technology. If you stay behind the times, you will never keep up with your competitors. So we are always ears open, listening to those out there. I know, for example, earlier this year, our user guides, making those more fine-tuned and really making sure you, the end user, are easy to follow with our directions, but being customer centric and innovative with our nationalities. Again, we are headquartered in Copenhagen. We're dedicated to delivering our exceptional imagery, quality, productivity, and user experience. Here in North America, we do have our sales and support here at our Broomfield location, like I said, from our sales and marketing efforts to our engineers. We have 2 similar offices in Germany and Hong Kong. Israel and Japan, we do have our manufacturing and our research and development centers and headquartered. We have offices, like I said, here in Colorado, Cologne, Tel Aviv, Beijing, Tokyo, and our expert teams of global partners like Air Supply today. We serve and support our customers worldwide. Going into our iXM metric medium format camera. So again, our iXM100 and iXM50, we are a high productivity metric camera. We have a huge range of specially designed RSM lenses. Those RSM lenses from the 35mm all the way up to the 300mm AF lens. Each lens is specifically created to fit our pixel and sensor size while maintaining, a huge piece for us, our sharpness across that image. These lenses have high optical resolution, and they offer new users for both what we've seen recently, both in our inspection markets and our mapping applications. These lenses are integrated with our leaf shutter technology, and they offer high capture speed for an array of flight conditions. Going on to our specs, with the iXM camera. I think some key takeaways here, of course, when I speak to folks today and those of you attending, our weight, including our 80mm lens, we're at 1,100 grams, so call it 2.5 pounds there. So we are in that arena of 2.5 pounds, our camera and lens combined. So including today, which Wyatt will get into with the weight, the total takeoff weight, you're looking at about 25 pounds with the gimbal, with our camera and the aircraft itself. Some key hits today, like I said earlier, these are our RSM lens options. Again, the utility sector has been huge for us lately, those out there creating the story for us from going out and being in the field. We are super grateful and thankful for our customers today in the inspection market, in the utility market, in bridge inspections, tons of applications out there that we're doing today with our unique features of our cameras. Again, with our 3-point, our medium format sensor, with our backside illuminated technology. With our iXM100, we have a fast capture rate of 3 frames per second. We have a USB-C and 10G Ethernet for our versatility of connectivity to our UAV aircrafts. And then again, we have complete integration with drones, including our iOS application for remote control, which I will get into later today. In today's application, you know, our drone solution opens the door to many different types of missions and applications for those end users today. A timeline here. So our most recent innovation, we got into the, call it UAV market in 2016 with our iXU camera. And those of you attending the webinar today may have an iXU model today, but then in 2018, we released our iXM line of cameras, which the purpose of today's webinar is about. So we have our 2 options of the iXM coupled with a UAV aircraft today. And one thing I want to note, in 2020, with our aerial acquisition, we came out with our 280 megapixel aircraft, or 4 aircraft, manned aircraft that is, which was a big release for us earlier this year on our manned aircraft side. I want you to know again, we are quick to respond to customer needs here. So this is the quick adaptation of our milestones throughout phase 1. A big key takeaway today, if you guys want to take one thing with you, I would highly, take a screenshot of this. This is our, our medium format sensor in one image. Our medium format sensor, the physical size is this much bigger than any DSLR camera today. In the former world of those analog cameras, it meant by any format. Now in digital, it means that the physical size of the sensor is close to what you're seeing here, 4.5 by 6 centimeters. The bigger physical size of the sensor, as you well know, those customers today, has a lot of positive influence on the quality of image, meaning clear and sharp pixels, and our quality of color in those shaded areas. You want to, we have an industrial camera that has an industrial body, and around that is our medium format sensor. Here we have our iX Capture, and iX Capture today is, for us, is a big desktop applications which people use today. It is a software of ours that people download on your desktop computers. This is a good workflow efficiency. You have control of your ISOs, your shutter speeds, your apertures, your other essential settings. It provides full camera control over one or multiple cameras. This is for as far as conversion applications, you're able to do this in here. You get real-time feedback from the image. You're able to look at that at your RGB histogram. You're able to, look at the image, gauge it, capture it, its exposure, the histogram, and as well as your GPS data. And then going forward, I will let Mr. Wyatt Robbins do his thing, and I will pass this over to Wyatt.
Thanks, Nick. I'm Wyatt Robbins, president of Air Supply Aerial. Happy to be here. Happy to help out on a project we've been working on for a couple years here, something I really take to heart. It's been a pretty fun integration, and it's really great to see so many of these systems out there flying today. There's been a lot of interest on this topic over the past couple of years, so hopefully we can clear up any questions and get the ball rolling for a few folks out there. A little bit about my company, Air Supply, airsupply.com. We've been around since 2016. We're focused as a commercial drone parts and accessories distributor and reseller. We offer and focus on payloads and integrations, very similar to today's topic. Also, full system solutions, full drone systems, all the way down to the sensor. We're based in Corvallis, Oregon, so it's bright and early for me today here on the West Coast. Maybe there's a few of you out there. We're also drinking some coffee this morning. In relation to today, we are the largest Gremsy distributor in North America, so all of the Gremsy products we stock, carry, and support, as well as the Gremsy Repair Center for North America. So if there's any warranty claim or unfortunate accident that happens, it gets sent to us, and we support those products. We've been working with Gremsy for about 3 or 4 years here. Let me see if I can go to the next slide. There we go. We've been working with Gremsy for about 3 or 4 years. This year is me visiting their Ho Chi Minh City, Saigon headquarters about 3 years ago, and on one of my trips over there. They've been around since 2011. They started with a background in cinematography and then later changed focus to more commercial solutions, as you see in their later gimbals today. So far, they have I think around 15 product lines of gimbals and accessories, specifically in the UAV sector, with around 5,000 gimbals out flying on a daily basis today. They have some very useful resources on their website, guides, tutorials, and troubleshooting. A lot of this information is out there, and a pretty good YouTube video series as well for setups and things like that. Their firmware and software and any updates can be found on GitHub, as we'll get to a little later. Their G-Tune software is a very essential piece to their equipment that helps you tune and use all of their equipment. So we'll be going over all the integration requirements and steps to mount an iXM onto one of Gremsy's gimbals. We came up with a integration kit a little while ago that includes a mounting plate that'll mount to the iXM, and then that'll mount to the camera slide on the gimbal. It also comes with a pass-through API cable that allows the camera to communicate with the flight controller, especially with the ever-popular M600. A power cable that'll allow the camera to be powered from the 14-volt power port on the gimbal, and a pass-through HDMI. All of these will pass through the gimbal, so you don't have to have wires hanging down any longer, and it's just a very clean looking and clean operating system. You can use either the new Gremsy T7 or the new Gremsy T3 version 3. Both of those have a universal hyper quick release that's been released on all of Gremsy's latest gimbals, including the S1 version 3, the T3, and the T7. So now if you have multiple payloads, you're able to swap these out, and in a matter of seconds, you have a different payload on your system. That kit also includes the dampening plate for 12mm rail mounts on most systems. It has the ability to just slide on your camera rail system and hold the hyper quick release as well as the gimbal. That gimbal is compatible with most flight controllers out there, as well as S-Bus and PPM control for both manual and autonomous missions. You'll need a power cable to power the gimbal from your system. It goes all the way up to a 12S system. So your M600 cables will power straight from the drone, as well as any XT60 or XT30 connectors straight out from a battery or power distribution hub. You'll of course need your own iXM 50 or 100 megapixel sensor, as well as one of their RSM lenses. Now, depending on which lens and which camera you choose may dictate which gimbal you decide on. If you're going to use the 150 millimeter or even the 300 millimeter lens on your system, I'd recommend the T7. The T7 and the T3 are very similar, and on these next slides here, I will go through the differences between the two. Very similar components, with the T3 being a little lighter. We're at just over 2.5 pounds, and the T7 we're at about 4 pounds. The difference being your max payload is 3.7 pounds on the T3 and 7 pounds on the T7. A lot of the electronics and encoders on the systems are similar, with the T7 just being a little more durable and just suitable for those larger payloads. And then a couple quick specs on the T7 there for you. And a lot of the images you'll see here in the next few slides are the T7 integrated. Originally, we did start this integration on the T3, and that has worked wonderfully. And then with a little help from Gremsy, they finally came out with the T7, which has been a very suitable integration for this task. I'm going to go over the steps to set up the T7 and the iXM on the M600. A lot of these steps are very similar no matter what system you're putting it on, but the M600 has been kind of the most tried and tested method out there. We have many customers out there today flying this, and I personally have quite a few hundred hours underneath one of these systems testing and flying. So we'll go over these steps, and then we'll touch base on Pixhawk flight controller a little later on, but just know all these steps are very similar going forward. So you will need, of course, an M600 or the M600 Pro with the latest firmware, an M600 remote, but I will mention 2 is preferred, as you can control the camera separately from your mapping mission, and that keeps things a little cleaner. It has the ability to be a single operator, so you can, set your camera remote down if you're flying an autonomous mission, or likewise. You'll need the Gremsy T3 or T7 M600 kit, depending on which gimbal you go with. Both of those include the following: your gimbal, that universal hyper quick release, an A3 cable that allows communication from the A3 flight controller to the gimbal. It will allow control right from your remote, so you'll be able to control the tilt and the pan of that system all from the fingertip. That'll come with that T3 dampening plate or the dampening plate 2.0 for the T7. Again, those mount on the rail mounts underneath. Purchased separately will be that iXM integration kit that we mentioned on the last slide, and that M600 power cable. So these would be the steps on how you actually set this up. First thing you're going to do is take off the hood on the M600, and that's just a few, I believe, M3 screws. You'll take off one of the main GPS antennas and open up kind of the brains of the system. You'll be able to see the flight controller and the Lightbridge 2 transmission system, and we'll plug in a few cables and unplug one there. So you'll route the A3 CAN bus cable for the gimbal, the API cable for the camera, and the HDMI cable all through the center of the drone. I don't know if you can see my mouse here, but there's a little cover here. This comes off, and there's some pass-through ports that go all the way from the top of the drone to the bottom. So you can easily route cables and keep things nice and tidy. That A3 cable will plug into the CAN bus port. There's 3 of those available on the flight controller. One is on the flight controller itself on the rail mount right next to the API port. And 2 of them are actually on the GPS antennas just as extensions. So any of those will work. It doesn't really matter which one you plug it into, it will automatically be recognized. The iXM auxiliary cable will plug into that API port on the flight controller and be passed down. And that's this gold cable here. It has a gold converter box on it that has a screw port so it can easily be mounted up under the drone. And then all of these cables will be plugged into that hyper quick release. For the HDMI, that's probably the only tricky part of this whole process, and that's just simply because it's a tight area. So I recommend taking out the original HDMI cable plugged into the LightBridge 2 and installing the included HDMI cables. One HDMI cable will go to the quick release here, and that's a micro HDMI to a micro HDMI. And then at the bottom of the gimbal, there is a micro HDMI out that will go to a full HDMI for the camera. So you have 2 HDMI cameras, everything is passing through the gimbal, and you won't have any issues with cables getting in the way. Once you have your cables routed through, we'll install that hyper quick release to the dampening plate, and that's just pretty straightforward. All the screws are included there, and that fits snugly on there. Gremsy had developed a precaution so that there's no way for that system to fall out. There's 8 screws that screw that on, and we generally recommend to Loctite that on just to be safe. Once you have that quick release installed, we'll install the dampening plate to the rail assembly. Center that on the drone so that your payload is at your center of gravity. One thing to note on that hyper quick release, going back a step, there's a white arrow on top of that you'll want to face forward, and that just makes things a little easier when setting up the settings on the gimbal, and that'll face battery bay 1 on the M600. Once you have the dampening plate installed onto the rail mount, you can then connect the 3 cables we passed through the center of the drone, and they're all easily labeled on that quick release there. Now we're ready to mount the gimbal up to the drone, but first we want to mount that camera to the gimbal. So first thing will be, we'll actually have to take the lens off of that camera, and that's a pretty simple process. There's 4 M2 hex screws just above and below the camera body, and those are just set screws. So they're at a 45-degree angle. They come out 5 turns or so, and once they stop, they won't come out. So you don't force them or anything. After that, the lens won't just fall out. Phase 1 makes a pretty nice system, so it's going to be kind of tight, but there's just an O-ring there that you are able to pull the lens straight off. Once the lens is off, I do always recommend, doing this in a dry area. You don't want to be doing this in the garage or anything, just so you don't get any debris on that sensor that could inhibit your image capture later on. Once you have that lens off, we'll be able to install the iXM adapter plate. And that's just 4 screws that screw right into the front of the camera there. I will note there is a top and bottom, so you want to make sure the bottom is on the bottom of the camera, of course, so that mounts to the camera slide, so your camera's right side up. In this image, the bottom is actually up here, and then this plate here will automatically come screwed to that. So whichever side has this small camera slide plate on it will be the bottom. Once you have all your screws nice and snug on the camera, you're able to mount that lens back up, and that just slips right back on, just like you took it off. You'll tighten your set screws, and we're ready to put it onto the camera slide. Now, there'll be camera screws included in the gimbal kit, and you'll be able to screw those into that camera plate I mentioned earlier. Once you have that on, that'll just slide onto the gimbal. So we'll mount the gimbal back up to the drone. Let's see what we got here. And one thing I did want to touch on. Not sure if I can go back here, Nick.
Yeah, I can. Give me 1 second, Wyatt.
Yeah, let's go get back a couple slides. I just wanted to touch on balancing. Once you have that mounted up, the biggest thing that's going to make your life easier is just making sure that camera is perfectly balanced. And a good rule of thumb there is no matter what direction you move that gimbal and camera with the motors off and the power off, it should stay put. So it shouldn't turn in any direction. The camera shouldn't automatically point down. If it does, that indicates that your camera's not balanced. Okay. Typically, I recommend balancing the tilt axis first, and that's in both directions with the camera facing forward and the camera facing downward. That's usually the one that takes the most balancing, and then the roll and the pan are pretty straightforward. But I can't stress enough how much balancing does help on the tuning process, which we'll get to next here. Thanks, Nick. Once we have that mounted up on our system, it looks really nice. We're ready to get flying. The only one thing we need to do is just enable the communication between the gimbal and the drone. So as I mentioned on Gremsy's slide earlier, you can download their software from GitHub. Alternatively, you can download the G-Tune app on your iPad and connect to all these gimbals wirelessly through Bluetooth out in the field, which is very handy. You can adjust settings and tweak anything last minute, set rotation limits, things like that, which is quite handy out in the field if you're out flying. We'll power on the drone, which will power on the gimbal. The gimbal will do a small calibration, so you want to just make sure you keep that free. It'll flash yellow indicating a ready mode, and will then either connect via Bluetooth or through USB to your computer, open up that G-Tune software. We will connect the gimbal, it'll pop up. We'll then go into settings, and then we'll choose the controls tab here. And we'll simply click on Lightbridge 2. A little pop-up window will come up and say, do you want to enable Lightbridge 2? You'll of course say yes. And from there, the gimbal should emit a blue or purple light indicating a CAN link connection with the drone. We'll power on our remote, and this will be remote 1, mind you, and you will have control of that gimbal. You'll simply hit the C1 back button, which will turn the motors on. It will also allow you to switch between lock and follow mode in the gimbal. Lock being the mode that locks the heading of that gimbal with the heading of the drone, which is typically what you'll want to use. You'll be able to control the tilt and the pan of that gimbal, all from the gimbal dial on the M600 remote. The C2 button on the back of the controller will allow you to switch between the tilt and pan control, so you can control one or the other. Typically, it will be the tilt. And this G-Tune software is also where you're able to tune the gimbal and adjust any settings, do firmware updates, things like that. diagnose for any issues. It's a very useful tool, and this really goes back to that balancing aspect. So the more balanced your gimbal is, the less tuning you really have to do prior to that first flight. I typically adjust the tilt setting mainly. That's going to be the one that has the most stress on it, just with that camera mounted there. Typically see a 70 to 80 tilt setting, and these are all screenshots just from the T3 setup that we had. So we'll ensure that it is indeed in lock mode indicated down here. Again, that can be changed just through the back of the remote. And that's going to allow manual control of the gimbal. So let's say you're doing a tower inspection and you want to fly it all manually. You can fly around the tower, capture different angles, both up, down, left, and right on that tower. Alternatively, we can fly autonomous missions by putting this into a mapping mode and setting motor limits. Let's say you want to fly a nadir or oblique camera angle. I usually just set a motor limit, and the gimbal will automatically snap to that motor limit on first startup. That can be set in these settings as well, simply by going over to that motor tab over here and setting that tilt limit to a 70-degree angle, let's say, or a 90-degree angle for nadir. That's once you have all that set up, you're pretty much ready to fly on the gimbal side. I'm going to turn it over to Nick here, and he's going to talk a little bit about setting up the camera with the M600 for communication there. Nick, I'll turn it over to you.
You got it. The man himself with all the knowledge, Wyatt. Thank you, man. So yeah, as Wyatt said here, the phase one, connection to our M600. The screen capture that I took here that you guys are seeing is with our iX Capture desktop application. Again, in here, you want to connect our iXM camera to the iX Capture software. You want to verify most commonly, that you have the latest firmware version that's installed on the camera, and you're able to see that through our About tab here through iX Capture Mobile. If not, you can go update, our phase one our firmware updater. You can access this all through our website on our downloads tab. But from in there, you will notice, you'll see our latest firmware version, and you can get the firmware updater as well. You want to insert an XQD card as far as our storage for our iXM. We use an XQD card. You want to insert that card into the card slot, any size, any brand of model as far as an XQD. You want to format that card under the Service tab, which you see to the left of the About tab there. And you want to make sure it's identified by the camera. But anyways, some key takeaways here that I want to show you. You want to press the Link tab, which you can access to the third from the right. So we're on the File tab, the Image tab, and then the Link tab. This is critical. And then on that right terminal, you want to make sure and select DJI Link. There'll be a drop-down arrow for that. Make sure you set it as that. After that, you will restart the camera, and then you will connect that camera to the M600 drone itself. After the restart, the camera should be able to communicate with the DJI UAV. Again, within here, within iX Capture through your desktop, you will go in there and select your camera. You'll notice it with your serial number as you see here. But again, what am I referring to? One of the key steps is our right terminal tab. We want to make sure and select the DJI link provided. Going forward, iX Capture Mobile. This is our mobile application. As you see for iOS, this enables our remote management of our iXM camera. It gives you that direct camera control. You're able to directly control the settings and functions. This is a picture, what you're seeing from our HDMI view that I took a couple days ago to broadcast and show everybody. This is our you're able to control your capturing method, your HDMI view. You're able to control your focus by double tapping the screen. But through in here, I wanted to run through as far as creating, a flight mission within DJI Ground Station Pro, DJI Go, whatever applications you're using today, using a phase 1 camera. It's going to require some additional settings when creating a flight mission, for example, in a 3D map area. But for example, you would go in, you would press the camera model option, you would scroll down and select the new custom camera. And then you would set all those required parameters, whether that's the sensor size in pixels and millimeters, your focus length, and then those tech specs that can be found at industrial.phase1.com. And then always a keynote for us, always uncheck that 35 millimeter equivalent box and use default values for all those parameters. What you're seeing here is our iX Capture Mobile. This is our, call it, main screen. You'll notice at the top here, our M600 Pro. I'm connected to the aircraft, got control of that. I'm using here our iXM100 with our RSM 35 millimeter lens. This is our HDMI tab, but basically up top, you'll see what I call our status bar. This just displays, of course, what you see, the connection signal status from our video signal strength, remote control signal, battery level, gimbal level, and then on the right, you'll notice, again, that camera information bar, call that, and that's going to display your camera model, the type of lens, the available space on that XQD card, the number of captures, your GPS signal. You'll notice the hide button, what that hide button is going to do. You can display that on the right panel. From the menu toggle, you can switch between the camera menu and the HDMI menu. The camera menu, of course, you're going to notice you can set exposures, capture, and geotag modes. On the HDMI menu, you're able to set that HDMI in focus mode. The exposure control bar, which what you see at the bottom there, you're going to set your ISOs, your shutter, and your aperture values. And then the capture button on the lower right, you capture images in video streaming mode and in stills mode. That status bar at the top, you're going to indicate our gimbal battery, RC battery, indicates even the drone battery, indicates our connection status to the UAV, indicates our RC signal levels, and the HDMI, or the HD, excuse me, indicates the video signal strength. Going over to our camera tab, so if I collect the camera tab, the iX Capture Mobile has our basically 2 refresh buttons, which you'll see at the top there for the drone refresh and our camera refresh. It's always available on the camera refresh button, use when there's no connection with the camera, or say one of the buttons in iX Capture Mobile application is indicating a problem. On the drone refresh, it shows when there's no connection with our UAV. A progress wheel displays when the app tries to connect. If the connection fails, you want to check the connection between the RC and the drone. You want to disconnect and reconnect the lightning bridge to the USB cable, and then you'll press your remote button. On our capture menu in the camera tab, basically it contains HDMI streaming, auto exposure, auto capture. For auto exposure, to activate the auto exposure, you want to slide that auto exposure switch to the right. Basically, it turns green. That means it's on. The exposure value is going to set the brightness of the image or video streaming. And then going forward on your DJI remote controller, the capture button is the trigger that captures in video streaming in still mode. The play button turns video streaming on and off. Focus dial you'll have on your RC, it switches focus steps when pressed. And then for any type of geotagging or auto capture mode in the camera tab, to activate the auto capture mode, you slide that auto capture to the right. Again, it's going to turn green and on. The distance mode, the camera is set to a capture at an image at a predefined distance, usually in meters within our application. You can set intervals, values using those distance fields. The time mode, a camera is set to a capture, of course, an image at a predefined time. That's in seconds. You can control those time values using the time field in seconds. Going by a waypoint mode, excuse me, that camera is set to capture an image, excuse me, at every waypoint that was predefined or marked in the flight plan. But yeah, note the DJI application enables those flight mission controls. Let's see. And then last but not least, Wyatt and I had discussed this, whether, what to talk about with our Pixhawk, because that is a key piece or a key typical common question today when speaking with folks. And basically what we wanted to highlight here in this diagram is an image for the settings and configuration to trigger the camera through Mission Planner. This LEMO connector from the camera needs to have the black, which you see the black and gray wires connected to the negative on the aux6 port. And the purple is to the signal. Then you need to set the camera trigger as a relay, RC7 is the camera trigger, and the first relay at the aux6 port. Then you can set up a flight plan using the survey grid with phase 1 settings, and it will fly a mission and connect the camera. For GPS labeling, note that last bullet point on this screen, everybody. You need a NEMA stream into RS-232. You put that cable, RX cable, from the camera. So yeah, again, Paula, who is our marketing manager here for the Americas, will host our Q&A session. We want to respect everybody's time. We got about 13 minutes. So again, contact information, everybody. Wyatt, before you jump in and add your conclusion, before we ask and answer questions. If you haven't already, our most common configuration with our T7, like Wyatt hit on earlier, is our iXM 100 with that 80mm AF lens. 8 out of 10 call it sales that we get on the UAV. Those are the typical UAV configurations. Everybody in attendance, reach out to phase 1 for any follow-up questions that we don't get to today. Wyatt, I will pass off to you for any wrapping notes you want to say before we get into Paula and some questions she'll have for us.
Sure, thanks, Nick. Yeah, I just want to say, thanks for attending, you guys. If you do have any questions or any interest in any of these systems, don't hesitate to reach out. Happy to chat, answer questions, and help find the best solution for you guys. So I'll just leave this to you guys to ask as many questions as we can fit in this short amount of time. Paula?
Yeah, hi. First question is, I have one cable that does not pass through the Gremsy Gimbal because there was no cable. I think maybe the API cable, is that now available so there are no wires hanging around the gimbal?
Yeah, so originally on the older versions, they didn't have that larger pass-through. And very recently, we had just come out with the pass-through. I believe Gremsy is still actually manufacturing them. So, if you were to call me tomorrow, I probably wouldn't have one for you. But I would say in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we will have the 2-part pass-through cables. So you won't have to have that cable hanging down any longer.
Thank you. Next one, are photos GPS tagged?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep, that goes back to the that link that Nick showed in the iX Capture. All of that is getting pulled from the DJI GPS, or alternatively, Nick mentioned in that Pixhawk screen, the RS-232 NEMA stream.
Yep.
Thank you. Another one says, any pointers on the workflow of capturing inspection grade data?
Yeah, I guess I could run with that. I would really, practice within iX Capture Mobile, really working on, the lighting, the focusing, even your distances as well, whether that's, 30 feet from the structure, 50 feet from the structure. We even did a bridge inspection from 130 feet. As far as a typical workflow, I go out and fly missions, collect sample imagery, And I'd be glad if you want to reach out to me directly. I'd be glad to share some common practices that we do here at Phase One. Our customers out there today, as you well know, keep their secret sauce to themselves as far as what's working from them. But I'd be glad to answer that directly if you'd like to reach out, sharing some stuff from Phase One.
Yeah, and I'll just add, give yourself a little bit of a cushion in aperture, just so everything remains in focus. I guess that'd be my little tidbit just from doing some test missions, things like that. Just kind of know how far you are from objects, and the images will always turn out really clean. So,
Thank you. Next question is, can the gimbal center point be set in software?
Yeah, so that was in that G-Tune software. Under that motors tab, it allows you to set the home point. So if for any reason that gimbal isn't facing forward automatically with the drone, you're able to offset it. Or if for some reason you want it to face backwards or something like that, you can adjust that home point. So it'll automatically boot up and go to wherever you set it.
Next one is, can the picture metadata capture the gimbal orientation on top of the geotag?
Not at the moment, I don't believe.
Yeah, not at the moment.
I believe the camera allows for it, but at the current state, I don't believe the gimbal sends data to the camera.
Yeah.
Okay. What is the most common use case for the Phase One Gremsy combination?
Wyatt, I'll let you answer first, and then I'll say mine.
Okay. Yeah, I guess our typical customer base is survey applications, a lot of autonomous mapping, and then that inspection realm. You get the odd professional photographer that wants to just have the largest sensor they can find to take cool pictures, and myself included, I've went out and captured some pretty cool just landscape photography. But typically you're doing survey work, that high precision, high area capture. That's where you really see the efficiency come into play.
Yeah, I think, and Wyatt hit on it there well. I mean, we are limited with our 400 feet restriction. Wonderful FAA rules and regulations are today. But the higher you go, if you really want to boost up your accuracies as far as the survey type application, the mapping, call it application, that's where you're really going to benefit from us. From our 35 millimeter camera, talking about wide field of view, you're able to capture, a ton in one image compared to, a DSLR, to my slide earlier today, to the inspection application with our 80 millimeter lens, 80 millimeter AF, remote focus type feature. You're really, even myself, I am not the best pilot as far as, the shakiness that I can have out in the field, and that with how the Phase One handles that and the focus it can bring into a picture, and you're able to capture as far as a pilot or a sensor operator, whoever's, if you're using those two controllers Wyatt hit on earlier, you're really able to see the clarity, the zero pixelation you'll see across the image, and then those shadowed areas as well. One thing, like I hit on earlier with our camera technology, those cloudy days, don't rule that out using a Phase One camera. We're able to enhance those areas of that image.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just add one more thing there, Nick. You pointed it out pretty well. The higher you go, the more area you're going to cover on the ground. So I think I had it on a slide earlier on, but at 200 feet with that 80 millimeter lens, it's a 3 millimeter GSD, and then at 400 feet, we're a 6 millimeter GSD. But you're still just going to capture a lot less images. There's a lot less images to have to process while maintaining that extraordinary.
Good point.
So.
Thank you. I think the last and final question is, will Phase One support USB storage directly from the camera?
It's a great question. We even had, we've had some people reach out to us about CF Express cards. So we are, always looking to adapt and change. Of course, like I said, customer centric. We are listening So that is one thing I will be sure and relay to our engineering team for that. I know, keep pressing me with, stuff you guys want to see better in the field. For example, this question here. So I would love to say yes to that question, but your question is noted and will be relayed up the chain to our engineering team. I promise you that. But again, my point here, I want to make your guys as being the operators, you guys doing the dirty work out in the heat, in the cold. I want to make your job more efficient, less painful while being in the field. And so please, like Wyatt was saying earlier, we want to make this, a better workflow for you guys, make it as easy as possible when doing your mapping and inspection applications out there.
That's it with the questions, Nick and Wyatt. Thanks very much. I'll hand back to you.
Sweet. So yeah, a couple minutes here to wrap up. But again, thank you guys for the time today. Again, we understand this is kind of the new wave, or the new, call it virtual offering. And so Wyatt, thank you for joining us today, being the partner he is. Wyatt with Air Supply being one of our top resellers in the country for our cameras. Again, like he said, any questions, please reach out to us. Our emails are shown here. We'd be glad to answer anything, talk about anything. And again, we wish you all good health, stay well, and you guys have a good rest of your day and a good week. Safe flying. Wyatt?
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for having me, you guys. Thanks for attending here. Happy to be a part of this project. Really excited to see where people take this system. It's always great to hear how customers are using it and getting those interesting use cases. That's kind of what gets me going, is all the various applications out in this industry. So it's really been a fun ride over the past few years. Excited to see where it goes. And like Nick said, don't hesitate to reach out. We do carry and stock all these items. So whenever you're ready, we'll be there. Thanks.
Take care, everybody. See you later.